Tascha Teso Vigyaswarat Tene Brahma Hirdaya Adikavaye Muyanti Yatsurayaha Tejo Vari Madam Yata Vinimayo Yatra Sargo Misha Damnasrena Sadari Rasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi O my Lord Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva,
O my Lord Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva,
O all-pervading personality, Godhead,
all-pervading personality,
I offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
I offer my respectful obeisances.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute
and the
truth.
primeval cause of all causes.
And the primeval cause of all causes.
Of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes.
Of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes.
And he is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him.
And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him.
It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji.
It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge into the heart.
The original living being.
The original living being.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
As one is bewildered by the illusory representation.
As one is bewildered by the illusory representation.
Of water, seed, and fire, land, sea, on the water.
The water, sea, the fire, land, sea, and water.
Only because of him do the material universes.
Only because of him do the material universes.
Temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature.
Temporarily manifested by the reaction of the three modes.
Appear factual, although they are unreal.
Appear factual, although they are unreal.
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna.
I therefore meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna.
Who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode.
Which is eternally existent in the transcendental abode.
Which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world.
Which is forever free from the illusory representation of the material world.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute
Dharma
truth.
projita kaitra vocha.
Dharma projita kaitra vocha.
Paramo nimatsaranam satam.
Paramo nimatsaranam.
Vedyam vastavam atra vastu.
Vedyam vastavam atra vastu.
Shivad tapatrayon mulanam.
Shivadam tapatrayon.
Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite. Kim va purer Ishwaraha. Sadyo hridi avarudyate cha. Krite bihi sususubhistakshana. Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated. This Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. Such truth uproots the threefold mysteries. This beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity is sufficient in itself for God realization. What is the need of any other scripture? As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart. Nigama kalpatarur galitam phalam sukhamukat amrita dravya samyutam pibata bhagavatam rasam alayam Bahur ho rasaka bhuvibhavukaha. O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desired true Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful. Although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. Shinvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hridyantakstohi Badrani Vidunoti Suhitsatam. To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures, or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita, is itself righteous activity. And for one who hears about Krishna, Lord Krishna, who is dwelling in everyone's heart, acts as a best-wishing friend, and purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him. Nastapresu abhadresu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Sloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge. As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam and from the devotees, he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord. Tada rajastamo bhava kamalobhadayaschaye chita etaranavidam stitvam sattve prasidati. By development of devotional service, one becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance, and thus material lust and avarice are diminished. Evam prasana manaso Bhagavat bhakti yogataha Bhagavat tattva vijnanam mukta sanghasya jayate. When these impurities are wiped away, the candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness. Becomes enlivened by devotional service and understands the science of God perfectly. Vidyate hridaya grantis chidyante sarvasamsaya siyante chasya karmani drista evat manishware. Thus bhakti yoga severs the hard knot of material affection and enables one to come at once to the stage of a samsayam samagram, understanding of the Supreme Absolute Truth, Personality of Godhead. Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness can one understand the science of Krishna. Srimad Bhagvatam, Canto 2, Chapter 3, Text 22. Parahite nayane naranayam lingani vishnur nanirikshato ye. Padur ninamto druma janma bhajo Shetrani nanu rajato hariryo. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. The eyes which do not look at the symbolic representations of the personality of Godhead Vishnu, his forms, name, quality, etc., are like those printed on the plumes of the peacock, and the legs which do not move to the holy places where the Lord is remembered are considered to be like tree trunks. Purport. By His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Especially for the householder devotees, the path of deity worship is strongly recommended. As far as possible, every householder, by the direction of the spiritual master, must install the deity of Vishnu. Forms like Radha Krishna, Lakshmi Narayana, or Sita Rama, especially, or any other form of the Lord like Nrsimha, Varaha, Gauranitai, Matsya, Kurma, Shalagrama, Shila, and many other forms of Vishnu like Trivikrama, Keshava, Achyuta, Vasudeva, Narayana, and Damodara, as recommended in the Vaishnava Tantras or Puranas. And one's family should worship strictly following the directions and regulations of Archana Vidhi. Any member of the family who is above 12 years of age should be initiated by a bona fide spiritual master, and all the members of the household should be engaged in the daily service of the Lord, beginning from morning 4 a.m. till night 10 p.m. by performing Mangala Aratika, Niranjana, archana, puja, kirtana, shingara, bhoga vaikali, sanya aratika, pata bhoga at night, sayana aratrika, etc. Engagement in such worship of the deity under the direction of a bona fide spiritual master will greatly help the householders to purify their very existence and make rapid progress in spiritual knowledge. Simple theoretical book knowledge is not sufficient for a neophyte devotee. Book knowledge is theoretical, whereas the archana process is practical. Spiritual knowledge must be developed by a combination of theoretical and practical knowledge, and that is the guaranteed way for attainment of spiritual perfection. The training of devotional service for a neophyte devotee completely depends on the expert spiritual master who knows how to lead his disciple to make gradual progress towards the path back home, back to Godhead. One should not become a pseudo-spiritual master as a matter of business to meet one's family expenditures. One must be an expert spiritual master to deliver the disciple from the clutches of impending death. Srila Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakur has defined the bona fide qualities of a spiritual master, and one of the verses in the description reads, Shivigrahara Dhananidyanana Shingaratan Mandira Marjanado Yuktasya Bhaktam Sha Niyunjatopi Vande Gurur Shri Charanara Vrindam. Shivigraha is the archa or suitable worshipful form of the Lord, and the disciple should be engaged in worshiping the deity regularly by shringara, by proper decoration and dressing, as also by mandira marjana, the matter of cleansing the temple. The spiritual master teaches the neophyte devotee all these kindly and personally to help him gradually in the realization of the transcendental name, quality, forms, etc. of the Lord. Only attention engaged in the service of the Lord, especially in dressing and decorating the temple, accompanied by musical kirtana and spiritual instructions from scriptures, can save the common man from the hellish cinema attractions and rubbish sex songs broadcast everywhere by radios. If one is unable to maintain a temple at home, he should go to another temple where all the above performances are regularly executed. Visiting the temple of a devotee and looking at the profusely decorated forms of the Lord, well dressed in a well-decorated, sanctified temple, naturally infuse the mundane mind with spiritual inspiration. People should visit holy places like Vrindavana, where such temples and worship of the deity are specifically maintained. Formerly, all rich men, like kings and rich merchants, constructed such temples under the direction of expert devotees of the Lord, like the 6 Goswamis, and it is the duty of the common man to take advantage of these temples and festivals observed in the holy places of pilgrimage by following in the footsteps of great devotees, Anuvraja. One should not visit all these sanctified pilgrimage places and temples with sightseeing in mind, but one must go to such temples and sanctified places immortalized by the transcendental pastimes of the Lord and be guided by proper men who know the science. This is called Anuvraja. Anu means to follow. It is therefore best to follow the instructions of the bona fide spiritual master, even in visiting temples and the holy places of pilgrimage. One who does not move in that way is as good as a standing tree condemned by the Lord not to move. The moving tendency of the human being is misused by visiting places for sightseeing. The best purpose of such traveling tendencies should be fulfilled by visiting the holy places established by great acharyas, and thereby not be misled by the atheistic propaganda of money-making men who have no knowledge of spiritual matters. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The eyes which do not look at the symbolic representations of the personality of Godhead, Vishnu, his forms, name, quality, etc., are like those printed on the plumes of the peacock. and the legs, which do not move to the holy places, where the Lord is remembered, are considered to be like tree trunks. Srila Prabhupada, Patita Pavane Ki Jai, Gaura Premanandi Hari Bol. So here we see, well, first one little clarification. Prabhupada is saying every grihasta should have the deity installed in the house. But he also said anyone, I think it said 5-mile radius, maybe 10-mile radius of the temple, should consider the deity in the temple as their principal deity and engage in the worship of the deity. Otherwise, everyone will stay at home and not come to the temple maybe. Maybe they'll come once a week. And especially if they're living in the neighborhood of the temple. So it's okay to have Gaura Nitai deities because it's difficult to commit an offense against Gaura Nitai and the holy name. Well, the holy name, you can commit offenses, but Lord Chaitanya is very merciful. But if you have like Shalagram Shila or Radha Krishna, that's a different thing because they have to be very strictly worshipped. Okay, so there are again many points in this purport. One major point is that Prabhupada defines the qualities of a bona fide spiritual master. There are many qualities, but he specifically points to the first stanza of the Guru Vastakam prayers to the spiritual master. So, the bona fide spiritual master will, one, engage his devotees in Shivigraha, in suitable worship of Krishna's deity, or Radha and Krishna's deity. And it should be regular, in other words, every day, from 4 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock at night. So it's an activity of the whole family. Now, there are families like this in India, especially some wealthy Vaishnava families. They have fully installed deities in their house, and all day long, there's one family, anyone who didn't come, it was a large family living in the same, let's say, neighborhood. Anyone who didn't come to Mangala Arati in the morning, whether they were the rich father or sons who have big businesses, they would be fined by the mother. 10 rupees or some fun. And they had to pay it if they didn't come. So in other words, you have these examples in India of families that are very strictly following the regulative principles, even though they might be multimillionaires. And they have to attend the house temple. And sometimes they're living in mansions. Like I've been to people's homes in Calcutta, especially very wealthy Marwaris. They have fabulous homes right in the center of Calcutta, and they have deities installed. In fact, I visited the Mulliks compound in Calcutta where Prabhupada grew up and did his Rath Yatra festival as a child. And his family was living near that compound. And he would go there every day, and you can see the same deities that he was brought up to worship. And that family compound is still there right in the Bara Bazaar area of Calcutta. And it's still a compound. They have cows in the compound. It's right in the center of the city, the big hub of the whole business community. There's plenty of mosques there also, right? But the Mulliks compound is still there. The family is still there. You can go and have darshan of their deity. It's a rather big temple also. And like I said, they had the first thing you see when you enter are the cows. You have to walk through the cow area to get into the temple. So it's a very nice way to live. And they're still worshiping the deity. And, you can see how Prabhupada grew up. Also, when it's time for the Muslim prayers, I think they must have at least 5 to 10 mosques in that area of the Bara Bazaar. Right? Or at least, you hear one, Allahu Akbar, then another one, then another one, then another one. They must have, I don't know 10, but they must have at least 4 or 5 mosques in that area also. So see, this is the whole idea of God consciousness, that the whole society is organized in such a way that all day long you can remember God. So a friend of mine visited Pakistan recently, and he noticed one thing about Pakistan. He said all day long the people are reminded of God. All day long. And he said, that one thing he said I like very much about Pakistan, because they have the call to prayer at least, I think it's like 5 times a day, and beginning early in the morning, like in the Mangal Arati time, and going right through to late at night. And all day long people are saying Allahu Akbar, and they're saying Salam Alaikum, Allahu Akbar, Inshallah, Mashallah. They're always talking about somewhere or other that the name of God on their lips. And you don't see that as much except in places like Vrindavan or Tirupati or Srirangam. Yeah, in those places you see the same thing. That all day long the people somehow or other are talking about God. But in the big cities now, you don't see it so much in India. They're so busy. But the Muslims still have, like I said, there's 5 times the call to prayer. Hindus have their temples also. They have the Mangal Artis going. But Hindus have not built so many temples in the last 50 years. Whereas before, they built so many temples. There were every block there was a temple. Of course, they have these little shrines in the cities, and you have these professional pundits, make their living by showing the deity and doing some little bit of puja. But the idea of a society, it's called the Aryana society, based on remembrance of God 24 hours a day, is the model. And you see the Muslims copied that model, and that model is practiced in the really holy places of India, even till today. Yeah, Srirangam is a very nice place. It's a Vedic organized town in which you have the Brahminical section, the Kshatriya section, the Vaishya section, and the Sudra section. And they all come together in the temple, the main temple, which is huge. It's 160 acres. And there's so many temples inside the main temple, right? So you can go in there and stay there for hours visiting all the little temples as well as the big temple. And you come out Krishna conscious, you're God conscious. It's a very nice experience. And that was my plan for Bellevue, is to purchase all the buildings around the building we have and make that a hub like Srirangam, right in the center of Bellevue. And so maybe we'll be able to do it. And the other idea I had was to buy a high-rise building in downtown Seattle and start from the lower planets, then the middle planets, then the higher planets, then the causal ocean, and then Vaikuntha, and then eventually Goloka, all the way at the top. Right? So as people go up, floor by floor, they're experiencing, the different parts of the material creation, and then the spiritual creation, and finally Goloka Vrindavan. So maybe one day we can buy that high rise and do it. And in Bellevue, I want to my plan is eventually buy all the buildings around the building that we have and make that a gigantic hub of Vedic culture. And then the last thing I want to do is build a temple on top of the mountain, on the I-90, that people have to walk up to. Because look, the mountains on the I-90 that are visible on the I-90 look very similar to Tirupati. Okay. So if we could purchase one mountain and then not build a road, but build a staircase and build a temple right on the top that would be seen everywhere from the I-90, and then it doesn't have to be a gigantic temple. It could be a smaller stone temple. We would import the stones from India and have them carved in India and bring them here and assemble it. And it doesn't have to be a gigantic temple, right? It could be a gigantic temple in the future, because Tirupati started with a little shack over 1,000 years ago, right? And then eventually, because Ramanujacharya sent some of his, he sent Anantadeva, his disciple with his pregnant wife. They walked from Srirangam all the way to Tirupati. They had to walk up through the jungle and the wild animals to the top of the mountain, and they started to worship the deity on a regular basis. Otherwise, the deity had been worshipped for thousands of years, twice a month, by a Brahmin who would walk up. So then Anantadev, he stayed there and he started developing it, and then he convinced Ramanujacharya to walk up the mountain. Ramanujacharya refused to walk up the mountain because he said, it's so holy, I don't want to put my feet on it. But Anantadev convinced him to walk up to the top, and from that point on, it started to really develop. And today, it's like tremendously developed. And still people walk up the mountain. So we could do that even if we start very humbly. The trick is, and I'm gonna do this. I'm developing a very, let's say, a good relationship with the governor, and I would like to eventually convince him to let us build a temple on top of one of the mountains in the I-90 area, and have a staircase going up. You know, staircase, only a staircase in a mountain costs a lot of money. But that would be the first step. And then, it would take 50, 100, or 200 years to develop it. And it would be Tirupati in the United States. Yeah. And in Seattle. Anyway, we'll see what happens. Okay, so Prabhupada makes a big point here. Simple theoretical book knowledge is not sufficient for a neophyte devotee. Book knowledge is theoretical, whereas the archana process, that means worshiping the deity, is practical. Spiritual knowledge must be developed by a combination of theoretical and practical knowledge, and that is the guaranteed way for attainment of spiritual perfection. So this is the science. Now, yesterday or the day before, we talked about science. Or yesterday we talked about science. So what is science exactly? It's a systematic study of the structure and behavior of the physical, natural world. Well, that's the materialistic definition. But the second definition is the one that makes more sense for us. It's a systematic, organized body of knowledge. That's exactly what the Vedas are. A systematic, organized body of knowledge, including spiritual and material knowledge. And this is explained, like I said yesterday, in the 7th chapter, 2nd verse of the Bhagavad Gita, Jnanam teham cha vijnanam, where it says, let's see, we'll read that again. Idam vaksyami asesataha yajgatva nebhyo najgatavya avasisyate. I shall now declare unto you in full this knowledge, both phenomenal and numinous. This being known, nothing further shall remain for you to know. So numinous, as we explained yesterday, is what you don't see, but what exists. It's like 100 years ago, people didn't see electromagnetic waves. They still don't see them today, but they see the effect of them through radio, television, cell phones, and different forms of communication. So, and these waves are carrying images and sound, and talking, and and you can see movies and all these things on your cell phone. It's all because of these electromagnetic waves that people didn't see before. They don't see today, but at least today they see the effects of them. So this numinous world is referring to the spiritual world, but see, everything is actually spiritual. Even in the material world, it's spiritual. But as long as we are blinded by the desire to dominate material nature, we don't see that spiritual aspect of the material world. But it's revealed gradually through deity worship and chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And eventually you develop purification of the senses by which you can actually see spiritual reality also. So, that is, that spiritual knowledge must be developed by a combination of theoretical and practical knowledge, and that is the guaranteed way for attainment of spiritual perfection. The training of devotional service for a neophyte devotee completely depends on the expert spiritual master who knows how to lead his disciple to make gradual progress toward the path back home, back to Godhead. One should not become a pseudo means false, spiritual master as a matter of business to meet one's family expenditures. One must be an expert spiritual master to deliver the disciple from the clutches of impending death. And then there's the explanation of what is a bona fide spiritual master who's going to teach his devotees to chant Hare Krishna and to worship the deity and to clean the temple. The temple must be spick and span all the time. Okay. So when one uses their attention for dressing the deity and decorating the temple, accompanied by musical kirtana and spiritual instructions, meaning classes from scriptures, this can save the common man from hellish cinema attractions and rubbish sex songs. Well, this is what most people are spending their time on. Netflix and movies, movie theaters, and nowadays when a wealthier person builds a house, they build the cinema room. It's a big room with chairs, and they got a gigantic 96-inch or even bigger screen, and they just sit in there, and instead of having a little television, now they have the cinema room. And have you seen this in houses? And it's a relatively big room, and it's got all this electronic equipment in it, and people are watching these cinemas, and they don't have to go to the movies. They have their own movie theater in their house. And other people that are not as rich, they have their big television, or they have their cell phone. And so Prabhupada says to save the common man from the hellish cinema attractions and rubbish sex songs broadcast everywhere by radios. So that, now we understand why this 24-hour worship of the deity is so important. Because we like to see things, movies and so forth. So instead of the movies about all nonsense, we can see the deity and serve the deity in a practical way. So, and then now we have this deity course that's going to be offered to everyone virtually. When is it starting, Dhananjay? 26th of this month, yeah. So everyone can take this deity course. How many sessions is it? 8 sessions? 6 sessions?
June 26th, 6 live sessions.
6 live sessions, okay. So everyone's recommended to take it. Okay, so, and it says, formerly all rich men, like kings and rich merchants, constructed temples under the direction of expert devotees of the Lord, like the 6 Goswamis. And it is the duty of the common man to take advantage of these temples and festivals observed in the holy places of pilgrimage by following in the footsteps of the great devotees Anuvraja. One should not visit all these sanctified pilgrimage places and temples with sightseeing in mind. Well, that's exactly what the Taj Mahal is. It's not even a temple, it's a graveyard. You go and see somebody's sex life who died, and people think, oh, Taj Mahal, Taj Mahal. It's actually disgusting. You're going to see a dead person, right? And anyway, it's not. Maybe it's nice architecture, but it's nothing like Tirupati or Srirangam or Mayapur or Vrindavan or Badrinath. These are real places of devotion. I remember when I went to in South India, what is it called? Auroville. And in Auroville, which started by what was his name? Aurobindo, and eventually his Jewish wife, the mother, who he claimed was an incarnation of Durga. And so when you go there, they're all Hindus, right? But they don't have a temple. What do they have? You walk in this building, and there's a big mausoleum. Mausoleum means dead persons. It's like a dead person's house, right? And they circumambulate the mausoleum. Then they put their head at one point on the marble, and they say they gargle some prayer like that, and they're worshiping these 2 dead people, Aurobindo and his Jewish wife. It's really amazing what Hindus will do, right? They Hinduize everything, graves and dead people, and who knows. So, and Aurobindo, of course, before he got hoodwinked by his Jewish wife, he was good. I mean, it's not clear like Srila Prabhupada, but he wrote books that are hints of Vedic knowledge. But he was a highly educated person, so his English is like the king's English, so it's a little difficult to understand what he's talking about if you're not Krishna conscious. If you're Krishna conscious, he's talking in circumambulating way or in a circuitous way about Krishna, but it's not clear. So, but a lot of people followed him at one time. And Auroville is a interesting place to visit because they demonstrate also self-sufficiency techniques and cottage industries and so forth. But it's completely Mayavadi, and their temple is actually a grave, but yet somehow or other, India's amazing. The Hindus are amazing. They sort of build up this whole ritualized worship thing, even for 2 dead bodies of 2. They're actually mundane people. Right? Okay, so one should not go sightseeing to holy places. One should go to be instructed by saintly people in those holy places and to reverently worship and take part in the worship of the deity or witnessing it. of the deities. And it says, one who does not move in that way. That means what? It says, one should visit such temples and sanctified places, immortalized by the transcendental pastimes of the Lord, and be guided by proper men who know the science. This is called anuvraja. Anu means to follow. It is therefore best to follow the instruction of the bona fide spiritual master, even in visiting temples and the holy places of pilgrimage. One who does not move in that way is as good as a standing tree condemned by the Lord not to move. The moving tendency of a human being is misused by visiting places for sightseeing. The best purpose of such traveling tendencies should be fulfilled by visiting the holy places established by great acharyas, and thereby not be misled by the atheistic propaganda of money-making men who have no knowledge of spiritual matters. These are the professional gurus who are more interested in making money by showing the deity than by actually training people to be real devotees. So this is a very interesting purport, and it also reveals that trees are people who were extremely lusty in their previous life, and due to that lustiness, they're forced to become a tree, condemned not to move for sometimes thousands of years, and to suffer continually heat, cold, and injuries to the bark and so forth, and being eaten by animals and so forth. Okay, so Srila Prabhupada, Ki Jai, we'll stop right there. Are there any questions? You want to know more about it?
Yeah, just
he knows. He's going to take the... Dhananjaya is going to take the course. Everybody's invited to take that course. Do you have to pay for it, Dhananjaya?
Yeah, $108.
$108. Okay. So that's that. He'll give you all the information. You didn't know about it. Did they send it out to the Vaishnava?
I got it through an email.
What?
I got it through an email. Vaishnava's data.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So yesterday was a great program. It's going to get better and better now. Hare Krishna. And now we're going to recite, starting tomorrow, the first 4 stanzas of the Guru Vasa in the morning in Sanskrit. We'll recite the English and memorize it.